Welcome to the Paying Attention podcast. I'm Brent Beasley. I lead the Fort Worth Education Partnership, and I'm excited about our guest today, someone I have a lot of respect for as a public figure and also as a person, and that is our Fort Worth Mayor Mattie Parker.
Hi, Brent.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this.
This is fun. Congratulations.
Yeah, we've just started this. We probably have tens, if not dozens, of listeners. So
Okay.
it's really going to boost your profile.
That's okay. We can have a candid conversation.
Right.
Regardless.
It's been about a year since you brought a letter signed by community leaders. I was one of them to the Fort Worth ISD school board meeting. You spoke at the meeting saying that the current state of academic outcomes for Fort Worth ISD kids was unacceptable, I think was the word you used, and you called for change, but you also offered the full support of yourself and the city for the district. And one of the things that happened was the superintendent at the time, Dr. Ramsey, resigned about a month or so later, and then Karen Molinar became interim superintendent. So I'd love to talk with you first about why you did that and kind of what the response was at the time, and then we can talk about kind of what's happened since.
Sure. Well, as you know, because we were candid with each other and with the small group of people that we were meeting with, that no one wanted to do that, right? I certainly didn't, as the mayor of Fort Worth, shine any kind of negative light around the largest school district that serves the city of Fort Worth. And I think that's worth mentioning before we chat about Fort Worth ISD. It's one of our school districts. There are 12 in Fort Worth. About half of our students attend Fort Worth ISD. And for me, I have been fortunate over the last over a decade to work, in education policy in some way or form. Sometimes wake up every day and that's all I did, and then other times like as mayor. But I had just grown increasingly more concerned about first the lack of urgency that I saw from the district at the time around student outcomes. And the proof was in the numbers, right? And how many schools were failing. I also saw, as did everybody else, a division between the board of trustees and at the time the superintendent. And that's not to point fingers at any individual, it's just those relationships were completely broken and there was no way to repair them. And I also, and I've used this example, it's like being in a high school locker room with a bunch of girls talking about each other. Right. And that kind of where it had created this dynamic where everyone in Fort Worth I interacted with that really cared about this community from all parts of our city, we were all really concerned about the direction of the district, what was going to happen. And I finally just felt like the bully pulpit of the office in which I sit today, I am the mayor for this period of time, but I do recognize the power and really the leadership responsibility the mayor has for Fort Worth is to try to draw attention to saying to the board at the time, please do something. Yeah. And importantly, we're with you, right? And we had a great cross-section of individuals from across the city of Fort Worth that were willing to raise their hands and also help. And obviously, I think it's been successful and we've moved the right direction. Yeah, I mean, it feels like it would have, you might have thought it would have been a dangerous thing to do as mayor to wade into that. And I'm sure you got all kinds of criticism for it. But you also got a lot of positive response and support from the community, I think, at least from my perspective. I know that we did. Sure, I got a lot of advice from folks that were worried about the political fallout for me. And yes, those risks, I guess, were there. But as I've shared with you before, this job is hard enough as it is, frankly. And if I'm going to be constantly hedging and worried about what the consequences are, it would be really debilitating. And I felt really strongly that this was a battle worth fighting for, and that our children, our kids across the city, they don't get to redo first grade or third grade or eighth grade. Yeah. And this was their one opportunity to get a great education. And so it was worth all that. But I do believe we've had a lot of support from community, but it's required us all to stay in the game. And for me lately, it's really been trying to help support Dr. Molinar and the bold leadership we've seen from her over the last year. Yeah, because she, somewhere in the spring, became permanent. Yes. Or I don't know if it's permanent, but... Yeah, we'll get into that,
we took away the interim tag anyway.
Yes.
And she's done a lot. Like we talked to her on an episode previously, and I just told her like it seemed like she came out of the gate like ready.
She was ready though.
Yeah, yeah, and she's not been just like minding the store, but like she's really been leading. Yeah. Whether that's on the school closure issue or some of the changes she's making.
Well, I think she and I seem to share the same sense of responsibility in the jobs that we currently have. And Karen is no different. You know, she's been an educator her entire career, most of it here in Fort Worth ISD. And she's going to go for broke, right? She's going to leave it all in the field and feel really great about the effort she's put in and make really bold but difficult decisions that oftentimes do have a lot of pushback. But she's demonstrated that willingness to explain and be transparent, but also push the district in the right direction.
She actually, I hadn't thought of it till just now, but she kind of shares something that I see with you, which is a sort of ability to level with people, you know, to a candor. That you do that, but she does that really well.
She really does. I always say, you know, you can't fake authenticity.
Yeah.
You either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And Karen is an incredibly authentic human being that shows empathy. And I also think we share a trait, at least I hope I do, that I can sit crisscross applesauce with kindergarten kids is the same as I can hold my own in a boardroom. And Karen is that person also. You know, when you see her walk the halls of the district and meet with her teachers and principals and parents, she wears her heart on her sleeve, which is what's been needed, right? Because significant change has been needed for a long time. And I should flip the script on you a little bit, because honestly, FWEP was one of the first organized entities in Fort Worth that was willing to publish and be very public about the state of education in Fort Worth.
Yeah, we felt that if we just spoke honestly about it, that something might happen. And when we first started doing it, people said, what are you?
I was going to ask, you did get a lot of pushback at first, right?
People did not like it at first. And I feel like now everybody's just become used to talking that way. But we got a lot also of, what are you wanting people to do? And I always felt like I don't really have the answer, but I just felt that if we speak about it and shine a light on it, people will respond.
Start to react.
In some ways. And I mean, you obviously stepped in and did that. And I think you mentioned being in schools. I wanted to ask you about Karen's leadership, because I think I've heard you talk about being in schools and you kind of hear from teachers and principals and about the district and about her leadership. I'd love to hear just kind of your impressions.
Well, part of it is just the juxtaposition I have, you know, over the last, I've been mayor now for 4 years, and Dr. Scribner was still our superintendent when I took office. Of course, then they hired Dr. Ramsey and now to Dr. Molinar. And the difference is really palpable. When you walk through a campus, whether Karen's with me or not, you can feel a difference in culture and focus for their school. I've used this story a few times because it's most recent, but first day of school, I went with Karen to Mary Louise Phillips, and the difference they've seen at that campus is tremendous, from really from a D to a B campus. And talking to the parents, that was what's most instructive, honestly, because the teachers and principal, they're very candid. But to run into, sort of by accident, parents who literally pulled me aside to say, this school, we came here for this change, right? We feel really strongly that the district is different, and here's why. They had 3 kids in 3 different schools, and that to me is really important to hear, because you can just see leadership, and that Karen deserves that credit, and also the people that she's put around her, and she is demanding excellence. And I think educators are also following her and feel well respected, and I have autonomy in the classroom, but they also know that that she's putting some major changes in place, and consistency in curriculum, which is also very important.
She's giving them resources that they really didn't have
before,
which is actually shocking to me that they didn't.
I know.
They didn't.
To learn more about Fort Worth Education Partnership, check out our website, fortworthep.org. And we are on Instagram at FortWorthEP.
You're not staying in your lane, as some might say. I remember a council member was going to do something on education, and a school board person at the time said,
stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. They said, you worry about the potholes, we'll worry about the schools. And you obviously have not followed that advice. Like, why have you've talked about it a little bit, but like, could you say a little more about that approach?
Sure. Well, to me, it's very obvious, but I have had to explain it to people that have had kind of that opinion that the future of our city really depends upon the kids that are throughout Fort Worth and every zip code. And if they don't have a bright future, then where does our city lie in the future? And importantly, that we've talked about this forever, and it's really across the country. Every child deserves an excellent education, regardless of zip code. But what does that actually mean? That requires all leaders, political, civic, business, parents, all of us, to demand that all of our students have access to an excellent education. And to your credit at FWEP, and also an acknowledgement in the data when we aren't. And right now, that is not true.
Right.
Not every child in
Right.
Fort Worth, Texas today has access to an excellent education.
Right.
And we shouldn't rest until that's different, right?
Yeah.
And I also think that as mayor, Texas is unique, right? If you've done any work, and I know that FWEP has looked across the country, there are various cities that have full control of their school districts, right? Their governance structure is quite different. In Texas, that's not the case. But you do level a certain amount of influence that I think is incredibly important, as long as you're using it for good. And, I'm not meddling day to day. I usually check in with Karen very periodically to say, what are you working on? What do you care most about? How can I support you? What are the big changes you're making? So that I'm speaking in line with what she wants to do. And that's a two-way street, right? She recognizes that need, as does the school district right now, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
But, I believe strongly it was the right decision to get involved.
I've tried the example of Encore, like if if the people of Fort Worth were constantly experiencing power outages, the city leaders are not in charge of Encore, but
you know what? I'm going to stay in my lane. You don't have electricity, haven't had electricity for 2 weeks, but we're just going to see how that works. No,
you would get involved,
it's a
and
very
the council
good
members
example.
would get involved, and you've done that because it's an urgent situation.
Yeah,
so,
yes, very true.
And I think there's some examples of how y'all have done that in the past year. One is we've already talked about the going to the school board and doing that, but also like what you've done this year with Clifford Davis Elementary, which we kind of named as a problem and said this is the lowest performing school in the city last year. And then you gathered folks together, and I'll let you tell about it, but you gathered folks together to try to do something about that, which is just a great example.
Well, and I think that's an example of something where, well, let me back up. One thing I've struggled with as mayor, candidly, especially as someone that's been behind the scenes most of my career. For 20 years, I practiced law and I worked for members at every level of government, federal, state, local, but I was always behind the scenes. And I actually thrive in that environment, honestly, because I consider myself sort of a policy nerd. I really enjoy getting to go very deep in an issue and understand it fully, to be the policy matter expert. Well, as mayor, I had to let that go. And you sometimes have to accept you're going to be an inch deep and a mile wide every single day. And that was hard for me, especially in education, because most recently, before I was mayor, the founding of T3 and the work we'd done to create that organization. All that to say, when the Clifford Davis example, I appreciate you mentioning it as the convening power of the office, and that's what we did. Yeah. I should have done it sooner. Honestly, we've been talking about Clifford Davis for a very long time. And I went there for first day of school. I think it was probably 2023 or 22. And at the time I was in a first grade classroom, and my youngest was first grade. So I had that example. Yeah. And I'll never forget, I can remember the posters on the wall. First day of school, there were 23 kids in that class, which is big.
Yeah.
And there were at least 4 or 5 languages being spoken in that classroom. Many of these children were first exposure to school, first exposure to English. And we essentially, as a community, had said to that sweet first grade teacher, figure it out.
Good luck, yeah.
Like, that's terrifying. You could grab a CEO from any major corporation, they couldn't hang for 30 minutes. I couldn't hang.
Yeah.
And that was true across the campus, the number of refugee families that were there, how few students were making any kind of literacy gains.
Yeah.
So all that to say that convening power was helpful, but Dr. Molinar was already on it. Yeah. She knew the structure, and she's now since made big changes that are going to happen as a part of Clifford Davis. But it is a powerful example of sometimes as a leader in this situation, that was true, if putting everybody in the room that I think could make a difference, because a lot of the issues facing Clifford Davis were not just education related. They were also the circumstances around that school that were affecting
There's
them.
the apartment complex that has all the refugee families.
Yes, significant code violations, a need to reach out to ownership. Our city attorney's office deserves all the kudos for jumping on it immediately.
My friend Chris Mosley.
He's awesome, isn't he? Chris, shout out to Chris. He's truly, and he is one of the top attorneys in the state of Texas, but we just needed to ask for his help, right? Say that you're an expert in nuisance abatement, you understand what it looks like to work with landlords, and he jumped on it immediately. So we still have a tremendous amount of work to do with Clifford Davis, but now the education, piece is
Yeah.
also in place.
But you're able to call people together that no
Yeah.
one else could have, really.
Sure.
Philanthropy and social services and city attorney and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other example I wanted to mention is the literacy roundup,
Mm-hmm.
which again, another great example of the city stepping in to address educational issues.
Well, and also for philanthropy, a recognition, that was also a benefit I'd had having worked at City Hall with Betsy and also founding T3. I've seen firsthand the power of philanthropy in this community. And I could give you we'll probably get into some today. Every single initiative that I've been successful standing up that is sustainable, even well after I'm mayor, philanthropy isn't at the table. And that example, meeting with Caroline James and meeting with Pete and others to say, we know dyslexia is a significant problem. What could the city do? And then asking our experts in neighborhood services to say, could you help us with this? And they knew that our summer, camps are a captive place for kids across the city of Fort Worth. We just piloted this year in a few different community centers where we knew how to hire volume. And just simply trying to screen these students. And it's a powerful example. Thank you so much for taking the time to bring some of those families to council, because sometimes it's just so fun. Little George, I'll never forget George, right? Getting to interact with them.
Yeah.
But again, that was a partnership. The city of Fort Worth had an opportunity, but we needed some additional assistance to really make it work, and we have.
Yeah, and I think from what I heard that they screened like 400 kids.
Isn't that amazing?
And I can't remember the number, but it was a lot. Most of them had some kind of issues that they needed, and then they followed up with parents and did the whole thing.
Yes, and then importantly, the advocacy model that's new, which is a partnership with the Downtown Rotary Club and volunteers there that are willing to serve as advocates with these families that are very intimidated. I would be intimidated also to work with a district in your school to say, these are the services my child may need and getting further services. So obviously, we've just gotten started, but I think we're really on the right track.
Yeah, it's a great example. Well, now we have the sort of specter of state takeover or intervention.
Specter's
as they
a good
say,
word.
over us. How are you approaching that and thinking about that?
Yeah.
We know it's going to be a big thing when it happens.
We do.
Whatever happens.
I think number one is we don't have our heads in the sand, right? We know that this is a decision that Commissioner Mike Morath legally must make. And that is very clear in state law. And the decision is his and his alone. And it's worth mentioning that really based on state statute, we're going to, this is it's more complicated than this, but it's the closure of the school that was failing or a takeover of the district. And there's a lot of options he has, and you may want to lay those out. But that decision is imminent, right?
Yeah.
And
well, let's say what it could be. It could be does not much that we see, like a conservator, which would be kind of behind the scenes.
Kind of watch closely,
Or it could be that they appoint a board of managers, and that would remove the current elected board. And then it could be that they replace the superintendent and he appoints a new one. But it could be also a combination. So it could be one or the other, or a board of managers and keep the superintendent or whatever. So,
Well, and I've met with parent groups, and I get this question daily, weekly, hourly at this point. But a few things I think are important for me to reiterate to people. Number one is Commissioner Morath, whether you agree or disagree with him in his focus in policy and education in Texas, he is an expert.
Yeah.
And he is not a appointee that's there just to hold an office. You've met with him before. He knows his stuff.
Right.
And he could tell you intimate things about our school district that we don't even know. And he is carefully examining these options. He saw transformation in Dallas ISD. He does not have to be doing the job he's doing. He's doing it because I think he truly cares.
Right.
And that doesn't mean I always agree with him, but I just think I lay it on the table. And I've told parent groups, if you sat with him and asked him, he would impress you.
Yes.
It might irritate you. He's so impressive, right?
Right. He can rattle off.
He can. He can. And so I know that he sees this as one of the largest urban districts in Texas that is also one of the lowest performing. Yes, he has seen bright spots and major improvement. I think 40 campuses have seen a letter grade increase.
Yeah.
But at the top of my head, I'll forget, how many do we currently have that are failing DNF campuses?
Yeah,
60?
I can't remember either, but it's a lot.
It's still unacceptable.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, if Karen were here with us, she would share in that same sense of purpose, and we've got to change that. So we can't control what Commissioner Morath does, but what we need to be prepared for as a community is to rally together and an attempt, and I know sometimes I probably sound Pollyanna, but the adults have to be the adults and not hinder progress for our kids in every school. And I know it will be difficult, but you're right. I think right now you're seeing a lot of different parent groups get organized and kind of prepare and give their opinions more vocally.
Yeah, I think, as you say, we don't really have control over it.
No.
So the question is, how are we going to respond to whatever the decision is? And we can, whatever it is, whether we like it or not, we can stand on the sidelines and throw bombs at it.
Well,
or
let me
we
ask
can
you
try to
this
be
too.
supportive.
Like I know you and Layla have looked at this really closely, and the changes you've seen in Houston ISD, they have been tremendous.
Yes.
But I know they've been painful.
Yes.
So much fighting and community division. I think we could do it differently here for sure. But I think that is important to note that the takeover has been successful in Houston.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, academically, I think they went from like 140 something D and F schools to this year they have 0 F schools in 2 years. And they have 0 F schools and like 18 D. And
the
this
largest
is a giant
school district in the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think that people are worried about is what's going to happen with the teachers. And they've had a lot of teacher turnover in Houston. They have lost a lot of teachers, but they have also attracted a lot of teachers. So they actually opened this school year with, I think, 2 teacher vacancies for the entire district. So again, maybe they lost a lot of teachers. It seems like they did, but they haven't had issues with like filling classrooms, and academically it seems to be working. So but the environment has been very negative in Houston. So I'd love to see us be able to
absolutely
do that differently.
And so I think, there's a lot of us that really care about this transition, no matter what it looks like, whether it's light touch from TEA or a full-blown board of managers takeover, is that once that decision is made, that we have to rally together to make the best of it and focus on making sure this becomes, which I think it can be, the very best urban district in the state of Texas.
Yeah. How are you thinking about how to help our community do better than kind of how it's gone in Houston, whether that's parents, community leaders, media, like how can we have a better environment? Do you think?
Well, number one, I think you have to lead with transparency, and you also have to gain trust. And so I have attempted with any organization or parent group that's wanted to meet, I've said yes. I don't ever, not accept an interview on this topic, or, if someone stops me in the street, wants to visit about it. Because I think, I know that once the decision is made by Commissioner Rath and everything kind of starts to fall, the way I lead will absolutely have an impact, right? And I don't want anybody to be confused, and I've told Commissioner Rath this, doesn't mean I'm going to agree with what you decide to do, right, fully. And I may have some pushback, but you will not see me flip a table, and that just is not my nature. And I'm going to remember those first graders I saw in that classroom at Clifford Davis. Right?
Yeah, what's best for those kids, even if you didn't agree with the decision, but what is now, in light of that, best for those kids? And
absolutely.
That's the thing. That's the hard thing to kind of keep in focus.
And also be more familiar with, and I have been, with Karen Molinar's moves and changes.
Yeah.
So that I can support the things we know are working and the shifts that we've seen. So I can speak candidly with Commissioner Rath or anybody else on his staff about where we've headed. And I've been very vocal of my support with Karen. I think that she has showed a level of bold leadership that we haven't seen in a very long time. And that word I used at the beginning, urgency, was so important to me, because we just kept kicking the can and expecting it to magically change, and it wasn't,
Yeah, I mean, I can remember us sitting in presentations about things that we knew weren't true. About how, and it is radically different with Karen.
Yeah.
Like, she's speaking the truth.
She'll own it for sure.
Yeah.
You can reach out to Mayor Mattie Parker and other city officials through their website, fortworthtexas.gov, and follow the mayor on Instagram @Mayor Mattie Parker.
Well, let's talk about one other education thing that is connected to kind of what you did before being mayor. We at Fort Worth Education Partnership put out a report a few weeks ago called High School and Beyond.
Yeah.
And what we were trying to do is look at what's happening to our kids, beyond high school, because we've talked a lot, as you mentioned, about, test scores and our kids at grade level in elementary school, which is really important. But now, like, what's happening, because it's not the test that we all really care about.
It's the kid.
It's what happens with their life, and the opportunities that they have. So So that's what we're trying to do with this report. So the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board follows 8th graders in Texas. And so we tried to dig into that. It's very complicated,
yes.
But try to present it in a way that made sense. And so what we looked at were 8th graders in Fort Worth in 2011 to 2013. Mm-hmm. So my daughter was actually in that group of 8th graders, and then follow them. So what we so you follow them, and we see that more than I expected are not graduating high school of those 8th graders, like 22%. Mm-hmm. So we kind of lose 22% before high school graduation, and then about 24% are not doing anything after high school, certification, 2 or 4 year degree.
Yep.
And then the other half about are going to community college or 4-year college, and some of those are getting a 4-year degree, some are getting a 2-year degree. So when you kind of follow it all the way through, it ends up being about 19% of those 8th graders are getting a 2
some
or
type
4,
of 2 or 4-year credential degree.
Yeah. And so now there are some that are going out of state, and we can't track those. So there are about 9% that went out of state. So we don't really know what happened with them. But in that kind of 20% ballpark. So I know have thought a lot about this with the Tarrant to and through that you started, and the work that they do. So I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on that whole sort of pipeline and what that means for our city and all.
Well, the data that y'all presented in that report was not surprising to me. It's the same data that was sort of our core hypothesis as to why T3 was necessary, right? Attempting to help every single student while they're still in high school find their pathway to college, career, military success. And I would also say that your report is super helpful in the discussion with families and parents, because I think sometimes test scores, to your point, feel very disconnected from day-to-day life, and a recognition that actually you should care about this because this is where your income earnings fall off and opportunities for your child, and why it is important for us to encourage all students to get a credential or a degree after high school graduation, or now importantly with our Mayor's Council, it's during high school graduation. We've got them captive for 4 years. We can do this together, right? And we all should know that data and care about it, because that to me is also back to the foundation of your city. Those students, those families, they don't leave Fort Worth. You're not going to export poverty.
Right.
And the word poverty is important because when you don't have access, when you don't have an education credential that it leads to a living wage job, you live in this generational cycle of poverty. The other thing I think has started to shift, not just in Fort Worth or Texas, but across the country, is this discussion around what does success look like in higher education for students. And I've attempted to do this to the best extent that I can, where, pathway to college, career, or military. What do you want to do? What are the credentials or degrees you need to get there? But you have to choose something, because a high school diploma is no longer enough. It's the work that Texas 2036 has been doing for over a decade to really refocus the Texas economy, because we know 90% of jobs are going to require some type of post-secondary credential.
The number that stands out to me is if you don't have something after high school, you have about a 12% chance of earning a living wage.
And that's crazy. Like it's 2025. My phone is running my life. I'm fairly sure we can find a way, while kids are still captive in K through 12 education, to help them overcome that statistic, right? And so that was really the emphasis around creating Tarrant to and through, that has now exceeded everyone's wildest expectations, and is really now has graduating classes, and it's really cool full circle for me occasionally when I run into a student that is a T3 scholar. Now that they're getting out of college or whatever it may be. So.
I have twins who are my stepkids, and they are sophomores in college now, but they were at Paschal, and the T3 person, I don't know what they called that, but that was at Paschal, was so helpful to them.
Good.
And we have all the advantages. You know, my wife is a college professor.
But you're not cool. I'm not cool.
Right.
But those near peer advisors are very cool.
It was great to have her on him about getting the application filled out.
It makes a huge difference.
Very helpful,
Yeah, and that was the model, right? Working with College Advising Corps, and they're an incredibly strong chapter at TCU, the near peer advisor model. Recent college graduates, they go back into our area high schools and help serve and really close the gap on college and career advising, which is such a need, and helping them find their pathway. So Yeah.
So for people who don't really know what T3 is, can you describe briefly what it is and what they do?
Sure. So the Tarrant 2 and 3 partnership that we started really in everyone's living room during COVID on Zoom screens, which is pretty amazing. It was really seeded out of Rainwater Charitable Foundation. I worked for over a year with the team there at Rainwater with Jay McCall and Jeremy and others to say, what would it look like for us to bring a model to Fort Worth and Tarrant County to help us focus on the data that you described in your report, right? Why are these students, when you follow them 8th grade, post-secondary pathway, especially 6 years post-high school graduation, why are they falling off? And how does that affect your local economy? And that was really the impetus to start Tarrant 2 and Through. And it's the simplest form. I'll oversimplify it. Now, Natalie and her team are doing this amazing work across multiple school districts. But when we started, it was just Fort Worth ISD. And it was across 5 campuses, 5 different high schools, and putting near-peer advisors from the TCU College Advising Core Chapter in those high schools to help close the gap. The average ratio in America for college advising is 1 to 400. Right? Can you imagine having 400 kids that you're trying to help find their future? Impossible. And really creating ratios that were absolutely manageable, especially at that senior level, but backing into freshman year. And helping them find their pathway, partnering with area higher education institutions from Tarleton to Texas Wesleyan to TCU, UNT, UT Dallas, and others, TCC, of course, and helping these students be successful. And it is now, all these years later, incredibly well respected across multiple school districts. Now backing into middle school, also has a career piece. And shout out to Dr. David Sines, who now works alongside T3, and he works on the Mayor's Council with Bill Coppola, formerly president at TCC, and then of course Tom Harris. So that work continues today, and I appreciate you asking me about it because it's something I will continue to be passionate about well after being mayor.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking about education with us, and I really appreciate your leadership.
Sure. Well, thank you for your work too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is a Fort Worth Education Partnership production.
To watch Paying Attention, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
You can also listen to Paying Attention wherever you get your podcasts.